so good this week. Today I'm speaking with Austin's own Richard Santos, who will be joining us shortly. I've known Richard for several years. We both worked together to help organize the Crawl Festival. Today I'm looking forward to talking with Richard about his debut novel, Trust Me, out March 31st from Arte Publico Press, which is a Texas publisher. I first spoke with Richard about Trust Me about a year ago when the book was in the manuscript editing phase. And as a book editor myself, I know there are few greater pleasures than seeing a manuscript turn into an actual book you can feel, purchase, read, talk about, and share. Richard and I are going to start with some conversation, and then if there's time at the end, Richard is going to read a short excerpt from Trust Me. Trust Me is available for pre-order at bookshop.org, by the way, which is a platform that connects readers with local independent bookstores. That's bookshop.org, bookshop.org. And in addition, everyone tuning in today will be entered into a drawing to win a free copy of Richard's book. More about Richard: he is a board member of the National Book Critics Circle, and he served as a nonfiction judge for the 2019 Kirkus Prize. He is also an associate editor for American Short Fiction. Before becoming a writer and teacher, Richard lived in Washington, D.C. and worked for some of the nation's top campaigns, political consulting firms, and labor unions. Richard has an MFA from Texas State University and has taught at Texas State, Georgetown University, and the University of the District of Columbia. And it looks like Richard is watching, so here we go, Richard. Richard, hey, can you hear me okay?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Awesome.
How are you doing out there?
We're doing okay, hanging in there, spending a lot of time reading and writing, trying to do some online classes. It's been interesting.
I was going to ask you about that. So you're a teacher, so how's that experience been like the last couple of weeks?
It's been interesting. Our school went to online classes on Monday, and we're starting slowly, giving students opportunity to do some self-paced learning, sending them assignments, recording myself, giving some lectures, and so on. Some of them may even hop on here today. Who knows? I'm not sure.
Yeah. Has it been a pretty seamless transition, or what's your experience with that?
I think there's been a lot of seams, but, I think... modern schools are pretty tech-heavy anyways right now, so I think that if you have students and teachers that are comfortable using electronics to teach anyways, then hopefully it's a little bit better. And I'm also teaching high school, too. I think for elementary school and some of the younger grades, probably a lot more.
Yeah, for sure. So just a brief description about Trust Me. I'm just going to read the log line, so to speak, of the book. This fast-paced debut novel follows political kingmaker Charles O'Connell and barrels through the New Mexican landscape in exploration of innocence and guilt, wealth and power, and the search for love and happiness, which sounds great. So I was gonna ask you if you could tell us a little bit more about Trust Me, and also the Santa Fe setting. What's your own connection to Santa Fe, and how did that research process go?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the novel's set in Santa Fe. Before the novel begins, a development group has purchased some land from a Native American pueblo who are trying to build Santa Fe's first modern airport. The Santa Fe airport is incredibly sweet and historic and really tiny. So they buy some land, but everything grinds to a halt when a skeleton is found on the construction site. And since this was a Native American pueblo, that complicates things a great deal. So what ends up happening is I've got a few different characters that follow the sort of ripple effects of this construction project and its stalling. One of them is the guy who's mentioned in the summary, Charles. He's on the East Coast, worked in politics, but has never really won many campaigns. His previous candidate almost went to prison. He almost followed him. So really, really struggling. This job offer comes out of nowhere. And he's never even been to New Mexico, doesn't know anything about it. But nobody else is hiring him, so he hops on a plane and figures, what does he have to lose? By the time he gets there, he realizes that things are more complicated out there than he realized. He might be able to get out of the state making some real money if he takes some risks, which of course he quickly decides to do, and things get complicated for him after that. But it also follows some locals, some people that are just caught up in these power imbalances that are all over the state. And Santa Fe is an amazing city. It's beautiful. I lived there for a year. To a certain extent, I followed Charles's path. I was in D.C. And took a political job on a campaign in Santa Fe. I've spent a lot of time in New Mexico. My mom's family is from there, but I had never really been to Santa Fe. And spending a year there really blew my mind. I love it. I try to get back there as often as I can. I live in Austin now, of course, but Santa Fe still feels like home in a lot of ways. So I really wanted the book to reflect that city and how interesting and kind of odd it is.
Yeah, I love Santa Fe. I've been there only 2 or 3 times, but I'm deeply in love with that city. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about, I mentioned at the top, your own experience with political campaigns and working with labor unions and so on, how that influenced O'Connell and influenced the book in general. How did you bring your own experience into your protagonist there?
Yeah, so I worked in politics for a few years. I was in D.C. for 7 years, and I had a great time and did a lot of good work and made a lot of good friends. But I also started to realize that I couldn't imagine myself spending years and years and years and decades and decades and decades working there. It really, really messes with people, really kind of grinds them down. And I think people go into politics really wanting to make a difference, wanting to make the world a better place, knowing that their candidates and their beliefs are the best ones. And then slowly things start to just shift. They start to change. Your priorities start to adjust so slowly you don't realize it. And I really wanted to explore a character who had really fallen way off of the tracks, who really went out into a political career wanting to make a difference, and at this point is just angry that he's not rich yet. That was the kind of driving force behind this main character. And I think there's not a lot of books about electoral politics out there that aren't focused on campaigns and who's going to win. And so it's also fun just to write about that world a little bit.
Yeah, well, there's Washington politics, and local politics definitely have a certain flavor as well. Did you, in your research in Santa Fe and New Mexico, what was that process looking at the local politics of, say, Santa Fe, and especially when it comes to the economic development / commerce conflict with culture and art?
Yeah, I think that's the real key thing. I keep talking about this book like a political book, and others do too. There aren't any politicians in it, not really. Some of the characters work on campaigns occasionally, but it's all really the people that are actually in charge in so many places around the country. Billionaires with money, people buying up land, people building new projects, kind of regardless of what happens to the people caught up in them. And that's not exclusive to Santa Fe by any means. I think that one thing that strikes me about New Mexico in general, and Santa Fe in particular, is the layers and layers of history and how small the community is. So you have people who have been there for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. You, of course, have a strong indigenous population. And there's also just not that many people who live there. So people are all bound up in the same family, whether or not they know it, whether they're the totally bottom of the socioeconomic ladder construction worker just trying to get through his day and trying to figure out how he can see his son, or some of the more millionaires that are actually kind of pulling the strings.
Yeah. So the book, Trust Me, was published by Arte Publico Press, which is a Houston-based press. How did your book get to Arte Publico?
It was a long, strange, circuitous process that I'm glad I'm with Arte Publico, but I do not recommend anyone follow this process that I went on. I spent years writing this book and rewriting it. I must have thrown out at least 3 complete drafts, and then just kept restarting it and tossing things. It just wasn't working. Eventually, I started to send it out to agents, queried tons and tons of agents, got tons of encouraging rejections, rewrote it, then followed the same path, rewrote it again, more and more agents telling me, pretty good, but no, not for us. Which for the writers out there, at least getting a personal rejection from an agent is it's like a win. That's like not that bad. It was enough to keep me going. But at a certain point, like I felt like I was just hitting my head against a wall. I wrote a whole other book in about 6 months in between revising this one. And then when I sent Trust Me out to my 50th agent, I got my 50th rejection. I was like, okay, that's fine. And I put it away. Most writers have that, desk drawer novel. And I was like, why am I any different from them? That's fine. I had another book to be working. But then Arte Publico last year won the National Book Critics Circle Lifetime Achievement Award. And I was like, okay, let me try one more time. Mm-hmm. I'll send it to them. They'll say no, and I'll move on with my life, and everything will be fine. But a month later, they wrote me back and said they were interested, and now we're here.
Yeah, you're describing a similar process with so many writers, so much rejection. But it seems like you have a very constructive, positive outlook on it, which I think is helpful for everyone. I'd like to ask you what you're reading now, but first I wanted to know if you wanted to read an excerpt from Trust Me.
Oh, sure. So we have a few point of view characters, but I'm going to read the introduction to Gabe. Hell of a week for Gabriel Luna. First, he was fired from a job he hated. Then he discovered his mean bastard of a father gave him bone cancer. Driving a dump truck on San Miguel Pueblo did not pay well, but it did pay. Gabe was helping to build Santa Fe's first major airport, and although the dust gave him headaches and he hated the hours and the heat, he occasionally felt something close to pride in the work. Then a bulldozer dug up a skeleton where there was not supposed to be a skeleton, and the whole site went to shit. A man with shiny shoes climbed onto the bed of a truck and, with shaking hands clasped in front of his mouth, sent everyone home. Gabe and the other laborers were given vague corporate assurances that the site would reopen after a swift investigation into the origin of the artifacts. He wasn't holding his breath. Holding his breath might be better, though, than letting the bone cancer tunnel through his body. The same cancer had worn his father down to nothing but pain and sweat. Gabe would not go out that way. The diagnosis came from Shaman Jeff, whom Gabe called Jefe. Wearing his customary blue Halliburton cap and smoking a cigarette, Jefe had said, "Yep, that's cancer, to the core. Can damn near see it dripping from your nose." Gabe imagined his dying old man spitting bone cancer cells like pollen spores, special delivery, aimed right at the son who was never there. Granted, no actual doctor had diagnosed him. Jefe's diagnosis came after poking a few lymph nodes and lighting a candle. But in 15 years, he had never steered Gabe wrong. The cancer was chewing on Gabe's bones. That was for sure.
I love that. I love that. I love that interesting Halliburton cap detail. How did you how did you add that? What was the influence for that?
I mean, New Mexico has got maybe 900,000, a million people living there, and I don't even know what percentage of that are government employees or government contractors or corporations that come in. If you can name a giant energy or defense contractor, they have a very large presence in New Mexico and own a significant portion of it. So you see stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, we're at 15 minutes. We could talk even more if you'd like. Sure. But I was wondering, what are you reading now? What are you reading now? And is there anything else that you want readers to know about Trust Me?
I'm reading lots of things right now, I think, like so many of us. But yeah, I wanted to talk about the Lost Book of Adana Moreau by Michael Zapata. You probably have a copy of this book.
Yeah. Could you see the excitement on my face?
It's great. Have you finished it yet?
I haven't, no.
Yeah, no. I'm about halfway through, and it's a really exciting book. It's a debut published, I believe, in January or February. Super cool. It's I suppose it's a sci-fi novel, but it's also not. It's a sci-fi novel the same way that Borges or some of Samuel Delany or Octavia Butler's books or sci-fi novels where strange things happening, got parallel universes and all sorts of stuff. But more importantly, it's just a story, and it's a really good one. And it's leading up to all these characters coming together in New Orleans just before Hurricane Katrina hits, and it's good. It's good. Jumps back and forth in time. It's really cool. Y'all should check it out.
Yeah, definitely.
I also just finished Tigers Not Daughters by Samantha Mabry. This was published earlier this week. Tuesday was her publication day. It's a YA novel. I encourage everyone to grab that and any of her previous other books. This book is set in San Antonio. Really great portrait of a family. The main characters are these three teenage sisters who are dealing with the death of their oldest sister, whose ghost, maybe, comes back. And it's really great. There's some really spooky parts, beautiful depiction of sisterhood, and just a great read for everybody. Like I said, it's a YA novel, but don't let that stop you.
Yeah. And is there anything else you would like to say about Trust Me that you think readers should know?
I hope you enjoy it. I know it's a little bit tricky to get a hold of books right now. Amazon isn't shipping any books until the end of April, but if you go through Bookshop or go straight to Book People or Bookwoman, then you should be able to get a copy of it. And hopefully y'all enjoy it.
Yeah, and I know that especially this spring, a lot of authors publishing in the spring are in the midst of a lot of cancellations. So are there any other virtual events that you have planned?
I've been doing some work with the Writers League of Texas and starting to schedule some other stuff with little Lighthouse Writers in Denver. And I'm planning on doing some sort of virtual book launch where the great Amy Gentry has agreed to be in conversation with me, another great local Austin writer. And I'll send out more information about that once we figure that out. We need to make sure that people can actually get copies of the books, which is why if we're giving one away, that might be the fastest way for people to get it.
Yeah, for sure. And so to the viewers out there, I just want to remind everyone who may be joining later that we are doing a giveaway of Richard's book, Trust Me. So anyone who is joining live today, we're doing a drawing. So we'll just, I guess we'll DM you and we'll figure out mailing address and we'll take it from there. But thanks again, Richard, so much for talking about Trust Me with us.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Matthew. This has been a great service. I have Deb's book in the mail already. I tuned in on Monday.
Yeah. Oh, quick question that just reminded me. So I did talk to Deb Unfirth about Barn 8 on Monday about the comedy in her book, and I noticed this in Trust Me, and I noticed a lot of reviewers noticed it as well, of the comedy in Trust Me. And I always find that kind of like a fascinating balance, comedy versus the real conflicts that are happening. How did you think about comedy in Trust Me, and how did you balance that with the more heavier themes of the book?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think that you're right. There's some heavy themes in the book. There's violence. There's like dispossession of land. There's drug addiction. They got all sorts of stuff happening, but people are funny, I guess, and like funny things keep happening. Even when we're stuck inside during a pandemic, right? There's still like humor all around us. And so I think it just kind of emerged naturally, I suppose. Like when I was writing, when I was throwing the characters together in rooms, people aren't always going to be serious, and they're not always going to be serious in serious situations. And so it just came out. But I'm glad that you noticed it. Glad you had it.
Yeah.